गातुं यज्ञाय गातुं यज्ञपतये दैवी स्वस्तिरस्तु नः स्वस्तिर्मानुषेभ्यः ऊर्ध्वञ्जिगातु भेषजम् शन्नो अस्तु द्विपदे शञ्चतुष्पदे ॐ शान्तिः 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 सहस्रशीर्षा पुरुषः सहस्राक्षः सहस्रपात् स भूमिम् विश्वतो वृत्वा अत्यतिष्ठद्दशाङ्गुलम् पुरुष एवेदगम् सर्वम् यद्भूतं यच्च भूयम् उतामृतत्वस्येषानः यदन्नेनातिरोहति एतावानस्य महिमा अतो ज्यायागिश्च पूरुषः पादोऽस्य विश्वाभूतानि त्रिपादस्यामृतम् दिवि त्रिपादूर्ध्व उदैत्पुरुषः पादोऽस्येहाभवात् पुनः ततो विश्वम् व्यक्रामत् शासनानशने अभि तस्माद्विराडजायत विराजो अधिपूरुषः स जातो अत्यरिच्यत पश्चाद्भूमिमथो पुरः यत्पुरुषेण हविषा देवा यज्ञमतन्वत वसन्तो अस्यासीदाज्यम् ग्रीष्म इध्मः शरद्धविः सप्तास्यासन् परिधजः त्रिः सप्त समिधः कृताः देवा यद्यज्ञन्तन्वानाः अबध्नन् पुरुषम् पशुम् तं यज्ञम् बर्हिषि प्रोक्षन् पुरुषम् जातमग्रतः तेन देवा अयजन्त साध्या ऋषयश्च जे तस्माद्यज्ञात् सर्वहुतः सम्भृतम् वृषदाज्यम् पशोगस्तागिश्चक्रे वायम्याने आरण्यान् ग्राम्याश्च जे तस्माद्यज्ञात् सर्वहुतः ऋचः सामानि जज्ञिरे छन्दागुंसि जज्ञिरे तस्मात् यजुस्तस्मादजायत तस्मादश्वा अजायन्त ये केचोभजादतः गावो हजज्ञिरे तस्मात् तस्माज्जाता अजावयः यत्पुरुषम् व्यदधुः कतिधा व्यकल्पयन् मुखम् किमस्य कौ बाहू कावूरूपादावुच्येते ब्राह्मणोऽस्य मुखमासीत् बाहूराजन्यः कृतः ऊरू तदस्य यद्वैश्यः पद्भ्यागुम् शूद्रो अजायत चन्द्रमा मनसो जातः चक्षोः सूर्यो अजागत मुखादिन्द्रश्चाग्निश्च प्राणात् वायुरजायत नाभ्या आसीदन्तरिक्षम् शीर्ष्णोद्यौः समवर्तत पद्भ्याम् भूभिर्दिशः श्रोत्रात् तथा लोकागम् अकल्पयन् वेदाहमेतम् पुरुषम् महान्तम् आदित्यवर्णम् तमसस्तु पारे सर्वाणि रूपाणि विचित्य धीरः नामानि कृत्वाभिवदन् यदास्ते धाता पुरस्ताद्यमुदा जहार चक्रः प्रविद्वान् प्रदिशश्च तस्रः तमेवम् विद्वानमृत इह भवति नान्यः पन्था अयनाय विद्यते यज्ञेन यज्ञमजन्त देवाः तानि धर्माणि प्रथमान्यासन् ते हनाकम् महिमानः सचन्ते यत्र पूर्वे साध्याः सन्ति देवाः अभ्यः सम्भूतः पृथिव्यैरसाच्च विश्वकर्मणः समवर्तताधि तस्य त्वष्टा विदधद्रूपमेति तत्पुरुषस्य विश्वमाजानमग्रे वेदाहमेतम् पुरुषम् महान्तम् आदित्यवर्णम् तमसः परस्तात् तमेवम् विद्वानमृत इह भवति नान्यः पन्था विद्यते जनाय प्रजापतिश्चरति गर्भे अन्तः अजायमानो बहुधा विजायते तस्य धीराः परिजानन्ति योनिम् मरीचीनाम् पदमिच्छन्ति मेधसः यो देवेभ्य आतपति यो देवानाम् पुरोहितः पूर्वो यो देवेभ्यो जातः नमो रुचाय ब्राह्मये रुचम् ब्राह्मम् जनयन्तः देवा अग्रे तदब्रुवन् यस्त्वैवम् ब्राह्मणो विद्यात् तस्य देवा असन्वशे ह्रीश्च ते लक्ष्मीश्च पत्न्यौ अहोरात्रे पार्श्वे नक्षत्राणि रूपम् अश्विनम् व्यात्तम् इष्टम् मनिषाण अमुम् मनिषाण सर्वम् मनिषाण ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः.
ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै. ॐ शान्तिः शान्तिः शान्तिः. So we are meeting after 2 weeks, so it might be good to revise where we are and form our context before we go ahead. So you know, we are taking this verse number 9 in the sequence that Swami Maheshananji has taken, and that is tam yagyam barhishi praukshanna purushan jatamagratah tena deva ayajanta sadhya rishayascha ye. So we saw the first part of it 2 weeks ago, and the meaning of this verse is that the goal of our lives should be, it actually is, but it should be hastened. If we take our sweet little time, it will just go on by for a long time, and we'll have to repeat the whole life's process over and over again without making significant progress. And the progress really, as you know, I think we should keep that in our mind, is to find immortality. We like immortality, but we don't know how to get it. First of all, most of the people don't even think that's possible. and then amongst the people who think that is possible don't know exactly how to gain immortality. So that is the goal of our life, and this is what the whole Purusha Suktam is itemizing for us, that if the goal is to find freedom, and the freedom is not after death, because it is not as though I have to get rid of the body-mind complex in order to be free from it. And we will see some definition of mrityu, the death, a little bit later on. But the goal is to recognize that I cannot die. No possibility of my dying. If the body gives up, let it give up. But nothing can happen to me. This has to be understood. So this is the goal of life. So with that in view, what was discussed in the last class was that we have two identifications. We are two people. Two people. So one is the human being born in flesh and blood. Made out of flesh, made out of blood, made out of bones, very much talking, listening, expressing, getting old, all of those kind, that person. So this is the flesh and blood person. And in order for me to become immortal, I have to go through two steps. So the first step is to go from the flesh and blood person to what would be called a yajna purusha. So we saw last time, from maithunat purusha to yajna purusha. And if the yajna purusha is serious about gaining moksha, to gaining freedom, immortality, then that yajna purusha has to become a devata, a sadhya devata, and a risha sadhya devata, as will be talked about in the second part of this verse. So he says, Tam yajnan barhishi prakshanna purushan jatam agrataha tena deva ayajanta. So ayajanta is past tense of yajna karanam. The doing of yajna is called yajna karanam, and the past tense of that is called ayajanta. So that's the peculiarity of Sanskrit. So yajanta is from yajna. So ayajanta is the past tense of yajanta. It means that it has to be done. And so we will see how that has to be done. But anyway, so the goal of life, again, is to go through a transformation from a flesh and blood person to a yajna purusha. So this we need to understand. What does it mean, this transformation to the yajna purusha? So there it says that to become a yajna purusha, I have to give up my identification and my process of leading a life as a flesh and blood person. Flesh and blood person means that I take myself to be a jiva. So consider this. This is the thing. Each one of us is sure about the fact that I am a living being with finite future. So this is our conclusion. Differences may occur, but more or less this is my conclusion is. So consider what that means. What that means is that my status as a limited living being is unquestioned. That is Satyam. Now what I need to do is to figure out how to improve my lot. And there are ways to improve my lot in this life, and there are, I'm told, ways to improve my life for the next life, if I have faith in it. So this is what we call a non-verifiable truth. So this whole punya papa and to expect a next life is a non-verifiable truth. And the only verification is that I have Shraddha in the Shastra, and the Shastra says, yep, absolutely, there is a next life. You cannot have this. The whole thing doesn't make sense if you have only one life. You plug in all the data, and it easily proves that there is a process of leading one life to the other. But if somebody says, give me the proof in this life itself, it's not possible. It cannot be verified. But what can be verified is that I can be free while I'm living. This is interesting. I cannot verify that I will have a next life or not, but I can verify that I can gain moksha in this life. So one can ask, how? And so this is verified by the examples of thousands, millions of people who have done it. And one can ask, where is the proof? How do you know? And, Swami Maheshananji was discussing, he says, I'm often asked, Swamiji, how do we know this person has become a sthita prajna? Arjuna asks the same question in the second chapter. Sthita prajnasya ka bhasha. How does he talk? What does he look like? How does he look? His eyes are kind of looking this way. Is he hearing things? What happens to this person? He's no longer a human being. He's something very different. Tell me, Arjuna. So Arjuna gives him the same answer, which is very disappointing to him. He says, when all his kamanas are gone, then he alone is Sthita Prajna. So Swami Maheshananji was saying that I'm often asked, how do you know that a person has quote unquote realized? Which was a big bugaboo word for Swami Dayananda. He says, there is no such thing as a realization. It is just clarity of vision that we have. Anyway, that's just a play on words. But anyway, the question remains, how can you tell? So we talked about the verifiable truth. How can you verify the truth? So all Swami Maheshananji was saying was that, listen, you observe him or her in his life and see where something bothers him. How does he take the unpleasant issues, pleasant as well as unpleasant issues of life? And so, if somebody says something to him which is an insult to him, how does he feel about it? How does he react to it? If his body is giving him problem, so that is the mental side of it. If his body is giving him problems, how does he react to it? Does he say, oh my gosh, why does it happen to me? When will this disease go? or he's laughing through the whole thing. He's having pain, but it doesn't seem to bother him. And you watch him over a long period of time. It's not just 1 hour or 2 hours or something like this. His whole life. And you find that the person is totally happy regardless of what is happening around him. Then alone you can say this is really the proof. And our entire Shastra is full of saying. In Taittiriya Upanishad, for example, he says, Vahu, Vahu, Vahu. He is Ahamannam, Ahamannam, Ahanna, Ahamannadaha, all of that. And in all the various, Dhanyoham, Dhanyoham, my gosh, what has happened to me? All the problems have gone. Nothing seems to bother me. And so these are all the experiences. And so this is a verifiable truth. Moksha is a verifiable truth. It's not like afterlife, which is non-verifiable. This is verifiable in this life itself. So, going back to the goal of life, our goal is to gain transformation from a flesh and blood person to a Yajna Purusha. And this is the first step. Then the second step is moksha. So the first step is to resolve to become a Yajna Purusha. And the resolution of becoming a Yajna Purusha is to resolve to give up the identity with the flesh and blood person. See what needs to happen. It's a little cold, but it's warming up. So, this is what needs to happen. You need to make a resolution. You see, because as long as, going back to what I said earlier, as long as you take the flesh and blood person as reality, that one is not to be touched. You don't question that. The question is, given that, what can I do? Given that, you cannot do anything. If you want to do something, it's some very minor things. You can improve your health, you can improve your well-being, you can gain more friends, you can maybe lengthen your life a little bit. One time, this reminds me, so there was a person in the Sailorsburg ashram. This is recent, more like 20 years ago, not when I was studying. But I was visiting Sailorsburg, and so there was a satsang going on. And so they were discussing about this one person who was very fond of long distance running. So Swamiji was very curious. He wanted to sort of see what his lifestyle is all about. And says, so how much do you run? He says, oh, I love it. I must do it every day. Sometimes as much as 4 miles, sometimes 6 miles, sometimes 10 miles. Half a marathon, but every day I run a lot. Swamiji says, okay, so what do you gain by this? He says, Swamiji, I have had a long history of family problems of this kind, heart disease, etc. And I am resolving to just spend all my time making sure I live longer. So Swamiji says, let's do some calculation. How much time do you spend in running? Anyway, I don't have the specifics. But anyway, Swamiji didn't want to insult him or anything. But when he was gone, he was talking to the rest of us and said, does this make any sense? You may be able to live a couple more years, 3 years, 4 years, and you're spending more than that in running, where you're not doing any productive work at all. Does that make any sense? So anyway, through as a flesh and blood person, you can do those kinds of things. You can do running, you can do workout, this, that, or the other. That one you can do, sure. But that's not finding immortality. So to find immortality, you have to become a Yajna Purusha. And the Yajna Purusha means, you know what that really means? It means that I am not going to necessarily take this flesh and bones person as the reality. This is what it all boils down to. Because as long as you take this as the fulcrum around which everything else should move, you can only do minor things. To do major things, what do you have to do? To do major things, you have to throw the Pradhana Purusha into the fire. Into the fire means you should be ready to sacrifice not the Gauna Purusha, not this. These are the words we used last class. Gauna Purusha is the one whose pashus are surrounding things. You can do all of that kind of a thing, but the Yajamana stays right where it is. Here the Yajamana itself gets into the Yajna. In fact, the Yajamana becomes Yajna. In fact, that is what it says, Tam Yajnam. Tam means the Purusham, which is also called Yajnam here. They are really one and the same. That itself has to be thrown into it. Thrown into means what? Thrown means that I need to resolve that this combination of Chetana and Jada needs to cut. Exactly like if you look at the functioning appliance. Functioning appliance is a mixture of the Chetana electricity and the Jada appliance, and then it goes to work. But if you want to really become free, because the appliance is not free, it is very vulnerable. Any filament can break, any kind of the power fluctuation can go on, it's gone. So there, if you really wanted to understand that you have nothing to do with this appliance, then you must be able to cut this mix-up between the Chetana and the Jada, the electricity and the thing that reflects the electricity. Then you can say, my gosh, what was I thinking? I am the very electricity which doesn't go at all in that example. It's free. This is what needs to be done. So this is what is said in our Shastras. Bhidyate hridaya granthi. Chidyante samshayaha. Bhidyante hridaya granthi. So hridaya granthi means the knots of the heart are broken up. What is the knot of the heart? The knot of the heart is Brahma, that the Chetana and Jada are mixable. They are not mixable. They are not mixable. So the earth and the sky are not mixable. They have completely different properties. So two hands can be mixable. The table and chair are mixable because they have the same level of reality. But a Chetana and Jada are not mixable. It's a Brahma in my mind. That has to be cut. And it has to be resolved to be cut. Doesn't get cut right away. We will talk about that a little bit. But there should be a resolution. Yes, it is cuttable. And in fact, this is exactly what happens when a person in India decides to take Diksha and become a Swami or a Swamini. Exactly what happens. Because of all of the teaching that they have taken, their own mind has resolved that I am now going to become a new person. That old person I am going to give up. Literally put it into the fire. And I am going to be a new person. This is the Diksha. So from that point on, that person becomes a Yajna Purusha. But you don't have to go through Diksha to do that. Diksha makes it a little formal. Kind of like, you don't have to get married to someone to begin loving that person. You can stay as friends and you can still have a very good relationship with a person without getting married. But marriage helps. Marriage helps because it formalizes the relationship. So something like that, where the Swamis and Swaminis, they can just say, okay, I'm ready to give up. Give me a new identity. But you and I can do that also. A little bit more informal, and it's just like I heard this so many times where people will say, I am joining a gym class, or I am taking physical therapy, or I have a yoga teacher that comes to me because I don't have the discipline to do it on my own. I need somebody to knock on the door and says, it's 10 o'clock, class starts. I need that discipline. But you can do it on your own. You don't have to really you don't have to go to a gym. You don't have to go to a physical therapist to come in, or a yoga teacher. You can learn from a yoga teacher, but then do it on your own. So here also, but the Diksha makes it very formal. And when it makes it formal, here's what happens. This is an important thing to see. So, before the Diksha, you were doing everything for the flesh and blood person. Your whole center of gravity was me. What can happen? What do I need to do? Is exactly what we do every day. So we are, as I mentioned before, we are very sophisticated beggars. We coax happiness from various things. And if I can't find happiness here, I change it. I go for something else. My whole drishti is, how can I be happier with the kind of things that I'm doing? You put your blinders on, and you go around searching and begging for things. But the whole center of attention is you, the flesh and blood person. Here, the center of gravity shifts to Ishvara. And an Ishvara who is not separate from you. It is the same person. Remember we saw in the Mundaka Upanishad, Dvau Suparno, two birds sitting on the same branch. And here also the two Purushas, the flesh and blood Purusha and the Yajna Purusha are in the same person. They are not two separate people. They are two separate identities, but they are not two physical two people. So what the Yajna Purusha, and so if we can carry the narrative of the Diksha process, in the Diksha process it means, here are the things that are done. First of all, your entire focus is towards the Paramatma, Ishvara. You let Ishvara take the responsibility of your progress. Number one. A lot of things, I won't go into the details. Number two, you stopped competing with others for anything. In fact, it is said that every time you eat, you are depriving someone else to eat the same thing. So it's a sense of competition. Anyway, let's not go into that. Here, you do not have a business of demanding anything. And so this is why the bhiksha is given. So if you look at all of the teachers, they rely on the society to carry them. And they contribute as much as they can. Some are teachers, some are workers, whatever it is. But it's a voluntary bhiksha that they take. And so that's another thing that happens. Third thing that happens is you are no longer a member of your previous family. You don't have a mother, you don't have a brother, of course no wife, no husband. If you were married before taking the Diksha, nothing. You are a completely independent person. An independent person who is ready to become a Yajna Purusha. So, as you know, the sannyasis in India are one of two types. I think you know all that, but I'm just giving you a quick summary of that. So the sannyasis are one of two types. One is called Vividha sannyasi, and the other one is called Vidvat sannyasi. Vividisha sannyasi. The other one is called Vidvat sannyasi. So Vividisha sannyasi means the one who wants to know but hasn't reached that point. So therefore the sannyasis, that swamis that you see and so on, we cannot tell which one where they are. The other one is Vidvat, means that they have already reached what they wanted to do, but because the society needs them, they are willing to teach others. They don't need it for themselves. The first stage is they need it for themselves. They have become Yajna Purusha. So this is the transformation that has to take place. An independent person who has assumed a new identity with just one relationship. That is the Yajna Purusha and Ishvara. Yajna Purusha and Ishvara. And if the Guru is required, then the Guru also, they have a relationship with the Guru. But they slowly become their own teachers, and they don't need to learn from somebody else. They've already done all of that. And so now they just have to perfect the very Yajna Purusha and to learn how to do complete sacrifice of the flesh and blood person. So this is what it is all about. It's all consistent. So here it's tam yajnam bareshi praukshana purusham ajyatam agrata is exactly what it's saying. It's very interesting. Yes, Swami Maheshanji. Swami Maheshanji actually has spent an enormous amount of time on this verse. After the last class, I usually go over the notes of the next class on the same day. So after the last class, I didn't get a chance to do that. So this morning, I started looking for the new material for this to make sure that it's all done. And I found the description in this verse to be over 100 pages. So this is the second book of this. It's called Dvitiya Khanda. So the verse number 9 began somewhere in about this much of the first Khanda. And I started reading it, I was reading it all afternoon. It wasn't finishing. And finally, it went in, I think 790. Okay. Now that I'm looking for it, I'll never find it. Yeah, 796 is the next one. Yat Purushu Vyadatu. Yat Purusham Vyadatuhu Katidha Vyakalpayan is the next one. Anyway, he has become very detailed and verbose on the process of making progress as a Yajna Purusha. And so I don't think we can go through in such detail. I'll probably spend maybe 1 or 2 classes on this verse before we go on to the next verse. But very beautifully explained. I wish we had the time to go through all the details of it. So, one very interesting aspect of this process of becoming a Yajna Purusha and your attitude, how do you live your life, and so on. So this essentially, as I said earlier, so the attitude of a sannyasi, or I would say the attitude of a Yajna Purusha. Let's call it the Yajna Purusha. Because you and I can be Yajna Purusha. We don't have to be a sannyasi. Sannyasi and Yajna Purusha are one and the same. So the sannyasi doesn't mean that you don't have to become a swami. You can be staying right at home as a karma yogi and become a sannyasi and a Yajna Purusha. But for us to do that, I have to do Ishvara Arpana Buddhi. I have to dedicate the center of attention, the center of gravity, so to speak, is no longer the flesh and blood Purusha, but something higher. And this is nothing but your own Paramatma status, which is Ishvara. That has to become the central point. And so this is what is called Ishvara Arpana Buddhi. So in Bhagavad Gita, Sri Krishna in the 9th chapter, verse number 22, I think. I say 2, but I believe it's 22. He says, Ananyas chintayanto mam ye janaha paryupasate tesham nitya abhiyuktanam yoga kshema vahamiyaham. So let's spend some time discussing the significance of this. So it says, Ananyas chintayanto mam ye janaha paryupasate. He says, for people who have dedicated their center to me, they have dedicated to me, they are no longer considering the flesh and blood person as the center of gravity. I am the center of gravity, and then I am none other than you. And for those people, I am responsible for their life's progress. Give it, you dedicate yourself to me, you throw yourself to me, I will take care of you. And you cannot do it by just mere words. You have to be sincere about this. Because you cannot, and our relationship has to be genuine. So let's spend some time. In fact, this is all that we could do. This is a very beautiful section. So here, Swami Maheshwaranji points out that, listen, we all know that doing actions in this life produces results. If you want to do something, you have to do the right thing to achieve that thing, and chances are you will get the results. And sometimes you may not, but it's very normal. If you're hungry, you eat food. And it's very possible that your expectation is that I will have a good meal and it will be beneficial to me. Sometimes it doesn't happen that way. Just the other day, my son, he has a lot of allergies, and I inherited from me, but really magnified. I only have allergies to a few things. He has allergies to a lot of things. So the other day he was visiting, and my wife had cooked a nice meal for he and his wife, and they were both having, and my wife was so busy lovingly preparing all the dishes and so on and so forth. And one of the dishes that she got was from a friend of ours, and there was some potato sabzi that she gave to Manoj, lovingly. Well, the poor guy had a bad reaction to it, because there's some Indian spices that he is very allergic to. And we didn't, because when she cooks it, she's very careful about what spices to put in. But this was given by a friend, so she thought it looked okay. So sometimes we fulfill our desires thinking it will be okay, but sometimes it does not happen that way. But that's all the exception. This is exactly how we live. So here's the thing. Our expectation is that I can get results from my actions. Okay? All right? Okay. Then where is the need for Ishvara, from Bhagavan, God? I don't see the relevance of God in this. So we say, well, you see, the thing is that there is a thing called prarabdha. Prarabdha means that there are a lot of actions in the past that have to be remembered, and so sometimes you may not be able to get expected results. Sometimes you get more, sometimes you get less, because there are factors that you did not consider, but they are factors that are stored in your karma. So this is the karma phala, and the wielder of that karma phala through the arabdha is Ishvara. So you see, you cannot say that Ishvara is not involved. So the person can say, okay, I understand that. I can do things on my own, or perhaps it was mandated by Ishvara, and so that's how I got results, and that's the reason that I sometimes get less than what I expected. I understand that. Now my question to you is, this person says, how do I distinguish the results of my action either purely through prarabdha karma? Because there are people who believe that, in fact, there are other schools of thought that believe that a conscious God is not necessary. Because your own karmas and your own yajnas will take care of it. So these are the laws of life, and the nature will take care of what you are born, how you are born, when you are born, what life you will take and all that. So there is no one who is really manipulating that. It just happens automatically. So now the question in the minds of this person is, how do I know that I am getting the results purely from prarabdha, or I am being helped by Ishvara's grace? Where is the chance for a grace? Where is the opportunity for a grace? There is no need for a grace, because karma and karma phala are intricately related, and they should take care of itself. So this grace business I don't understand. What is the difference between them? So it is said, listen, how can I tell the difference? Here's how you can tell the difference. This is the answer to this question. You see, the question should be clear. Again, question is that I am doing things, and I recognize that I am not perfect, and so my results may not be perfect, but this is the way things are. I understand that. I don't see and then if you tell me that prarabdha is involved, I accept it. Prarabdha is involved. Sometimes, you find that there are a lot of punya papas. So you see, this is exactly like this when you often find this in the newspaper where a person has committed some gruesome murder. I just read about this the other day. It happens all the time. And the police couldn't catch him. They didn't know some woman was murdered, 30 years ago. And it was an unsolved problem. And now with the analysis of DNA, they actually have a database of people's DNAs. And then now a new tool has come in where you can match. Was this DNA, was he living in this town at that time when the murder was created? They say yes. Was he related to this person? Yes. They say, oh my goodness. So you find, here's this guy who murdered this woman, or his wife, let's say, long time ago. And now because the police couldn't find him, he's living in a nice identity in a different state altogether. And he's got a family and he's just staying all by himself. And he's taken up a new identity. One day, there is a knock on the door. And so the sheriff walks in and he says, "Sir, put on these handcuffs." So his wife and children all say, "Well, what happened? Who is he? What's he doing here? Why is he talking to you like that?" The person says, "It is done. I'm caught." And so you can say, okay, there was some previous thing that was hanging over my head and I thought that I had gotten over it, but it's okay. Anyway, I'm just spending too much time on this. So the question is, how do I tell the difference between an automatic results of the karma phala, automatic results of karma phala, or the fact that there is a grace of an Ishvara, where I actually pray a lot and the results are given to me? How do I tell the difference between them? So this is all in the context of the conduct of a Yajna Purusha. When you no longer do it for yourself, but you involve Ishvara into the picture, what happens? What are the results? How do I tell the difference? This is the context that we are working on. So here, Swami Maheshananji says, here is the difference. The difference is, if through my attitude of involving Ishvara, my attitude of making him or her as the center of attention and removing your own ahankara from it, the I-ness of the flesh and blood person, if the results come, and regardless of whether it is good or bad, if you feel satisfied and it brings you closer to yourself as a person, then Ishvara is involved. If, on the other hand, the results either disappoint you or you are elated by it, thinking, my gosh, I'm lucky, I should do more of this. I bought this stock, I should double it again. I'm so lucky, what a wonderful stock picker I am. Then you are making your ahankara even stronger. Whereas in the other case, if you have a continuity of Ishvara's blessings on you, what will happen is you will feel more satisfied as a person regardless of what happens to you, and your ahankara will diminish. Then you're going in the right direction. So this is the difference between whether you think the Ishvara is involved or not. So here, there's a story that Swamiji says. He says that there was a young man who was born in a very rich family. And he was, because he was so well-to-do, his parents were well-to-do, a house and everything, he had a lot of friends. A lot of friends. They will always be there and they were all laughing and talking. And so one day he decided, I am not sure which of my friends are really sincere to me and which of them are just having a good time because I am rich. I want to find out. So what he did was, he concocted a story. He told his father, listen, I'm doing this. So you publish the fact that my son has done some bad things and I'm disowning him. And he's out of my house. And he is living in some small hut in a village close by. So he did that. He went to this small hut, and initially all his friends came up and said, oh my gosh, we're so sorry about you. This is terrible. But don't worry, we'll ride behind you and so on. Pretty soon, all of them had stopped coming. And there was one or two guys who stuck with him. And after a few months, he said, these are the people who are really sincere, and the rest of them are all for the money. This is what happens. So now, Swamiji says, another story associated with this. And this is a real story. This first one is just apocryphal story, just to make a point. But the second story now was a real one. Swamiji says that I had a disciple, a very rich man in a town, and he was a very pious person. And he would always have these kirtans in his home. And there will be a lot of pujas and clanging of things and chanting and this, that or the other. And all this goes on. And he used to feed the poor and so on. And everything was going on well. This is a real story. His grown-up son in his 20s suddenly died. And I don't know whether he didn't tell me whether it was his only son or not. But he says he was so crushed. Swamiji says, one time I was going on the road, and what had happened was that on the road he had thrown away all of the vigrahas, all the murtis of Ganesha and Shiva and this, that or the other, all on the ground, and stomping on them. He says, what good were you? You could not even protect my son. And I've been doing puja all my life. This kind of a Ishvara you are? So Swamiji says this is exactly the thing is that he was all for a good time. All for just making sure that everything is going on well, and I want to make sure that it improves even more, so I'm going to do more puja, invite more people, all because of me. But there is an implicit bargain that you don't leave me. If you go and live in some small hut or something, then I am not going to visit you again. And so, if this is the kind of bhakti you have, you are not a Yajna Purusha. A Yajna Purusha is where you are prepared to go for the long haul, where you are convinced that this is the real thing, and whether I have some setbacks on the way or not, doesn't matter. I am with you, and I am not with you, but you are with me, O Ishvara. That conviction will never go. And so here, to close off this topic, the second set of the verse now starts. Tena deva ayajanta sadhya rishayaschaye. So, for this, what needs to happen is that the Yajna Purusha has to become a deva. And so become a deva means, so here in Swami Maheshananji has pointed out that in the Brihad Aranyaka Upanishad Bhashya by Adi Shankara says the Purusha, the word Purusha has three different aspects to it. One is Deva, one is Manava, and one is Danava. Deva, Manava, and Danava. So Deva means one which is Divya Purusha, one who is very effulgent, light in their thinking, Sattva, emanating light for others. They are pure people. These are the Devas. Then the Manavaha are the, generally speaking, the people around in the society who may not be a Deva, but they are pretty good. They are okay. They slip up once in a while, but that's okay. Then Danavas, and you can identify this, Danavas are the people who are inherently bad. Lying comes very natural to them. Then criminal activity is the natural thing to them. So these are called Danavas. So you have Devas, Manava and Danava. So what happens is that for a Manava, which means Manu's offsprings, we are Manu's offsprings. To become a Deva, what needs to happen is that I have to purify my equipment. That's it. I have to purify my equipment before I become eligible to be thrown into the yajna. Because what happens is that in yajna, purity is very important. Purity of your thoughts, purity of the, your body, the things that you are doing, and it is necessary. You can say, how can it be necessary? What is the big thing about it? I don't understand. Why can't you just let me go? No, because Swami Maheshanji says, suppose you want to have an audience with the Pope in the Vatican. Okay? And you're wearing jeans, and the jeans that are deliberately torn. This is just an amazing thing. You go to these shops and they are already torn jeans with big holes around the knee and so on. And this is the fashion. And so you just take that and you say, you know what, I want to go see the Pope. I have an appointment to see the Pope. So the guy says, yes. May I help you? He says, I have an appointment with the Pope. The person says, but wait a second, you're not dressed properly. He says, he's just a man of God. Why does he care? No, you can't do that. Or you go to see the Queen of England. And the first thing that the people will tell you is, here is how you have to address her. You cannot say, hi there. Good to see you, Queen. It was very nice to meet you. You have to bow. Your Highness, or something like this you have to do. The same thing with the yajna. Swami Dayanand used to say this, that really, to go to a temple, you cannot just go in with, in fact he used to say that, it's very interesting, he says, what a contrast. In the West, you cannot go to a church without wearing shoes. So everybody has their own rules. And in Indian temple, you cannot go in with the shoes. So similarly, in the yajna, you have to have the proper ahuti. Ahuti means that the thing that you cannot just take some clods of earth and just throw it into the thing. It has to be done properly. That's why the samskaras have to be done with, patram. All the patram have to be purified. You have to be purified. Achyutaya namaha, Govindaya namaha, Anantaya namaha, etc. All of the achavaniyam, etc. has to be done. You have to purify it. Similarly, in order to become a yajna purusha, which is steady, committed, long-term, in order to get the anugraha drishti of Ishvara, you cannot go in with the papa karma samskara. You have to you have to really clean up your house. You cannot be a cheat, you cannot be a liar. Satyam is very important. Here is very interesting. Swami Maheshananji was saying that there are stories in Puranas about, so the Satyam means the truth. So I'll close with that. So there are stories in the Puranas about the efficacy of speaking truth transactionally. See, truth has two different aspects. One is vyavaharika sat, mean transactional, your transactions, how you deal with people, how you do this, that or the other. There is a certain truth to it. Then there is a paramarthika sat, which means no change whatsoever. Natural swarupa is truth. So here, Swamiji says, should be very clear to us, you cannot achieve Paramarthika Sat unless you achieve Vyavaharika Sat. You cannot say, I'm cheating on my spouse and this is the way it is and so on and so forth. But I'm learning Vedanta. Can't do that. I mean, you can do it, but it won't do anything to you. On one hand, you are living a life of conflicts. On the other hand, you are trying to do, what was it was an interesting thing. He says, I love humanity, but it is people that I cannot stand. So something like this. So the relative truth also has to be traversed first before you go to the absolute truth. And so in our Puranas, by the way, Swami Maheshananji made a very interesting, I didn't know this, that Puranas are also called mitha. Mitha. Myth. In fact, this is where the English word myth comes from, is this mitha. And mitha is the root of mithya. This requires a lot of time. We'll probably do it some other time, but let me close this off. So mithya means that the stories in our Puranas, like Harishchandra, and even in the case of Dashratha, who had promised his wife 2 boons, and he kept them, Satyam. He had to lose his life, and Rama had to go to the forest for 14 years. But whatever he had promised has to be kept. You cannot say, oh, I've forgotten that. What did I tell you? No, that was, I must have been, no. Rama is going to be, I don't want to discuss that at all. No. He says, you're right. So what he's saying is that the mithya, that's the point I just wanted to make, the mithya is, the story may not be true, but it points out to an unchanging truth about the necessity of leading a truthful life as a prelude to gain moksha. So this is the word myth from Puranas. So this is another thing we see is sometimes people say, do these stories really happen? They're like very strange stories in our Puranas. Hundreds of stories. They may not be real, but what they're pointing out to is real. So if you go to a movie, and so the movie may not be real, but it made certain points to you about leading your life, being good or bad or something, that part is true. So you cannot say that it's all poppycock. The story may be apocryphal, not real, but the lessons are real. Anyway, I'm over time, so we will continue with this. So what we are going to discuss in the next class is that the Yajna Purusha has to become devas, means to gain purity, and then to become super devatas, sadhya devaha, and rishi sadhya devaha. And I don't know how, I'll have to summarize all the points that Swamiji is making into something which is condensed into 1 or 2 classes, maybe just 1 class. And then we'll be done with this verse and then we can go on. So with that, let me close the class. Hopefully we'll see you next week. Om Asato Ma Satkamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. All right. Good to see you all. Chris, Suvarna, Darshana, Gajananam, Vandana Agarwal, Jayashri Raj, Jaya Chaudhary, Murli Deswani, Surendra, Lakshmi Kaushik, Mary Penn, Maithili Ramakrishna, Panna Bhuva, Zarina, Kalpana Dave, Balamani, Shanti Kumar, Satish Jalota, Virendra Singh, Natalia, Raj Velpuri, Ila Joshi, Surinder Chaudhary, Subroto Bose, Shankar Narasimhan, Arvind Taylor. Okay, couple of questions. One from Balamani. Detachment from flesh body's requirements, staying in family, but shift towards Ishvara. How is it easy? What is an adoptable process method? Is sannyasa easy way? Please explain if time permits. So, no, the formal sannyasa, Mr. Mani, is not necessary and not recommended. A lot of preparation is required for that, and it's not easy to do that rather suddenly. But even though not necessary, a mental sannyasa is important, and this is what we are going to be talking about in more detail. So what it means is that so this is what is said, that there are two basic things about your attitude towards doing karma. So one is called prarabdha karma and the other one is called kamya karma. So kamya karma, of course there are other kinds of karma also, nishiddha karma, what we should never do. It's called nishiddha karma, so we won't go into all of that. But the two principal things to keep in mind is prarabdha karma and kamya karma. Kamya karma means doing things for yourself. What your desires tell you to do because you feel good about it. Others are not included in that. If it happens that somebody else can also benefit from it, that's okay. But your main focus is based on to satisfy your own desires. And by that you mean, you analyze how much time. You can almost do like write a diary of what you do during the day and keep it for several days. Okay, so what you'll find is had breakfast. Good, you have to have breakfast. Then what about after breakfast? If you're retired, for example, you have a lot of choices. What did you do between breakfast and lunch? Well, I played golf. Okay, all right, so golf is a kamya karma. Then what did you do? Well, then I watched television in the afternoon, a movie, kamya karma. You don't have to do it, but you desire to do it, kamya karma. The other thing is prarabdha karma, where you don't need to do it, but you should do it. What you find, there are friends who are not well. So my wife, for example, she's always cooking for people who are very well, very sick. And so why? Because if we were sick, then we would expect some help from others. So she makes it a point to cook for others and helps out in different things. So this is prarabdha karma. Or if you are not well, to take care of yourself and rest, this is also prarabdha karma. So the primary thing here is that if you can transform your life by reducing unnecessary desires that you're spending time on, and only do things that are necessary, and any available time that you have, now you study and to also do some charitable work, your progress becomes much more real in that sense. So really non-attachment to kamya karma is sannyasa. You cannot just say, well, I've taken sannyasa, that means I don't want to help out in the home. No, that's not sannyasa. Sannyasa means that your own unnecessary desires that you're just fulfilling for yourself, if you're willing to stand up for it and give up, do so. And quite frankly, I had to go through the same thing. When we came back from the ashram, from PRC, I had to really examine what my actions were, where am I spending time. I used to be a pretty good tennis player before I went to the ashram. So my first tendency was to go back and playing tennis. And I said no. I gave up tennis, lock, stock and barrel. That's it. Why am I doing this? Just to feel good about it? If I want to do some exercise, I should just walk or run or go to the gym. That's it. But to spend a couple of hours playing tennis, it didn't seem right to me. So I had to really rearrange my life. Is this sannyasa? In a way, yes. And it's been good for me because my focus on the study and teaching and so on has enriched me. So this is what sannyasa means in that sense, Mr. Mani. So anyway, we can talk more about it. Vidvat sannyasa and Vidvan sannyasi here also explained. Yes, Shanti Kumar, this is the fun part about leading where we find that in the same Gurukulam of Swami Dayanandji, really all the teachers are very consistent in their views. It's so beautiful to see that we may have we obviously have differences in our capabilities, our knowledge and so on, but when we do teach something, it is not starkly different from each other. It's pretty much the same. So it's good to see that. Wonderful. All right, I don't think there's any more questions, and we are beyond time, so I take your leave and we will see you next week. Hari Om.